I'm just reading it kind of more or less like straight through, you know. Okay, here it is. Excuse me. Will you say it after me? Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Tanayanam Namaskritam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Todayam Udhirayat Nastaprayushu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavat Sevaya Bhagavati Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhagavati Naishtiki. We're reading for this fourth canto, Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 8. Dhruva Maharaj leaves home with the forest. These are three things which Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur apparently recommended devotees. One is the Kapila Shiksha, in the third canto, teachings of Lord Kapila, the incarnation of the Lord. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Kapiloham, among sages I am Kapila. So he taught the Sankhya Yoga and Krishna consciousness. That's all in the third canto, his teachings to his mother, Devahuti. Then also the Prahlad Charita in the seventh canto, teachings of Prahlad Maharaj, very cogent, and also the story about Dhruva Maharaj, which also Chaitanya Mahaprabhu used to like to hear that also. Maitreya Vach Shanakadya Naradascha Riburhangsharu Nirjati Naite Grihan Brahma Sutta Yavasan Udvaretasha. The great sage Maitreya said, the four great Kumara sages headed by Sanak, as well as Narad, Ribhu, Hangsa, Aruni and Jati, all sons of Brahma, did not live at home but became Udvareta, or Naistika brahmacharis, unadulterated celibates. Another son of Lord Brahma was Irreligion, whose wife's name was Falsity. From their combination were born two demons named Damba, or bluffing, and Maya, or cheating. These two demons were taken by a demon named Niriti, who had no children. Maitreya told Vidur, O great soul, from Damba and Maya were born greed and Nikriti, or cunning. From their combination came children named Krodh, anger, and Hingsa, envy. And from their combination were born Kali and his sister Durukti, harsh speech. O greatest of all good men, by the combination of Kali and harsh speech were born children named Mrityu, death, and Bhiti, fear. From the combination of Mrityu and Bhiti came children named Jatana, excessive pain, and Niroi, hell. So it seems like this is an incestuous situation going on.
Yes.
From producing the children, and the two children are combining, producing two others. Yeah.
And that is Kali that we know as...
Yeah, Kali, yeah. The demon Kali, yeah. My dear Vidur, I've summarily explained the causes of devastation. One who hears this description 3 times attains piety and washes the sinful contamination from his soul. Maitreya continued, O best of the Kuru dynasty, I shall now describe before you the descendants of Swayambhuva Manu, who was born of a part of a plenary expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Lord Brahma is called Swayambhu. One of his names means he's self-born. He doesn't have, material parents. He comes directly from Lord Vishnu. And his son, his first progeny was Swayambhuva Manu, as Manu, man. Swayambhuva Manu had 2 sons by his wife Satarupa, and the names of the sons were Uttanapad and Priyabrat. Because both of them were descendants of a plenary expansion of Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they were very competent to rule the universe, to maintain and protect the citizens. King Uttanapad had 2 queens named Suniti and Suruchi. This is the beginning of this narration about Dhruva Maharaj. Suruchi was much more dear to the king. Suniti, who had a son named Dhruva, was not his favourite. Once upon a time, King Uttanapad was patting the son of Suruchi, Uttama, placing him on his lap. Dhruva was also trying to get on the king's lap, but the king did not very much welcome him. While the child, Dhruva Maharaj, was trying to get on the lap of his father, Suruchi, his stepmother, became very envious of the child, and with great pride she began to speak so as to be heard by the king himself. Queen Suruchi told Dhruva Maharaj, My dear child, you do not deserve to sit on the throne or on the lap of the king. Surely you are also the son of the king, but because you did not take your birth from my womb, you are not qualified to sit on your father's lap. Without saying it, she's virtually accusing him of being illegitimate, because from the other queen wasn't the favourite of the king. My dear child, you are unaware that you were born not of my womb but of another woman. Therefore you should know that your attempt is doomed to failure. You are trying to fulfill a desire which is impossible to fulfill. Very harsh, huh? If you had all desire to rise to the throne of the king, then you have to undergo severe austerities. First of all, you must satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayan, and then, when you are favoured by him because of such worship, you shall have to take your next birth from my womb. The sage Maitreya continued, My dear Vidur, as a snake, when struck by a stick, breathes very heavily, Dhruva Maharaj, having been struck by the strong words of his stepmother, began to breathe very heavily because of great anger. When he saw that his father was silent and did not protest, he immediately left the palace and went to his mother. So Dhruva Maharaj, because he's from the Kshatriya order, he has a passionate nature, so he became extremely angry. He didn't just, accept it or become morose and go and sit in a corner and cry or something. He became extremely angry, and he went to his mother, and also his father didn't protest. So as it said, the greatest evil is when good men do nothing. If there's some evil being perpetrated and you don't do anything, or you turn a blind eye, pretend it's not happening, that's a great evil. Like that. So if someone makes offence to Vaishnava, Guru, deity, or the temple, or some holy things, you can't just say, then Trinada peace in each and being humble as a straw in the street and being tolerant as a tree, it doesn't apply to that. You have to act to protect, defend, by any means possible. Even Srila Maharaj said by the gun, or by the stick, or even by the gun. That also happened in Mayapur, right? It's what's his name? Devotees, a sannyasi now. He does a lot of kirtan. And his name is Kadamba Kanana Swami. He got shot, bullet went right through him actually, by some Muslim gangsters, and he was trying to protect the deity in the temple when they attacked. So you have to also be prepared for that as well. So when Dhruva Maharaj reached his mother, his lips were trembling in anger, and he was crying very grievously. Queen Suniti immediately lifted her son onto her lap, while the palace residents, who had heard all the harsh words of Suruchi, related everything in detail. Thus Suniti also became greatly aggrieved. You can just imagine the grapevine, in the palace, like going around and stuff. This incident was unbearable to Suniti's patience. She began to burn as if in a forest fire, and in her grief she became just like a burnt leaf, and so she lamented. As she remembered the words of her co-wife, her bright lotus-like face filled with tears, and thus she spoke. My dear son, don't wish for anything inauspicious for others. Anyone who inflicts pains upon others suffers himself from that pain. So she's very wise also. Because it takes great presence of mind and great strength of will and compassion, born of long time of spiritual practice, that to, as Lord Jesus said, if someone loves you or does good for you, it's easy relatively to love them or do good for them in return. But to love those who don't, are either neutral or that hate you or some bad relation, to wish them well at least. That's the Bodhisattva ideal, is to wish well for all living beings, those you like, those you're neutral, those you don't like, as Suniti said, my dear boy, whatever has been spoken by Suruchi is so, because the king, your father, doesn't consider me his wife, or even his maidservant. He feels ashamed to accept me. Therefore it is a fact that you've taken birth from the womb of an unfortunate woman, and by being fed from her breast you have grown up. My dear boy, whatever has been spoken by Suruchi, your stepmother, although very harsh to hear, is factual. Therefore, if you desire at all to sit on the same throne as your stepbrother, Uttama, then give up your envious attitude and immediately try to execute the instructions of your stepmother. Without further delay, you must engage yourself in worshipping the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the stepmother had given that advice, but her idea was to get rid of him, I would just go to the jungle and then you can worship God, and then you will die there in the jungle, and then you, by your piety and worship, if you're fortunate, you can take birth from my womb in your next. That was her idea, but still the advice was there, because everyone knows the sages go to the jungle, they meditate, they do penances unless they realize God. So then his actual mother is saying, actually her advice was good, but he's kind of giving it in another way, to actually realize God, and then you'll be able to give up this desire, this material desire for the throne. Suniti continued, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is so great that simply by worshipping his lotus feet, your great-grandfather, Lord Brahma, acquired the necessary qualifications to create this universe. Although he is unborn and is the chief of all living creatures, he is situated in that exalted post because of the mercy of the Supreme Lord, whom even great yogis worship by controlling the mind and regulating the life air, prana. Suniti informed her son, your grandfather, Swayambhuva Manu, executed great sacrifices with distribution of charity, and thereby with unflinching faith and devotion he worshipped and satisfied the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By acting in that way he achieved the greatest success in material happiness, and afterwards achieved liberation, which is impossible to obtain by worshipping the demigods. So generally, even in Hinduism, we were talking today about Hinduism, those who worship Shiva and Brahma, and those who worship Vishnu, generally it's for liberation, it's not for devotional service. Because, Lord Vishnu is the Lord, the sustainer, and so that sustenance is continuous existence. On one side you have creation, on the other side you have dissolution, and in the middle is continuous existence. So Lord Vishnu is the Lord of that, Sattva Gun. So they generally worship Lord Vishnu for liberation. So it's very common, even among Hindus, like if you ask them actually why they're worshipping Lord Narayan, they say, by His grace to get liberated. But our idea, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, is for eternal service of the Lord. Mama janmani janmanishvare bhavatad bhakti rahoitu ki tvai. I only want your devotional service, birth after birth. Like that. Different. God is different. My dear boy, you should also take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is very kind to His devotees. Persons seeking liberation from the cycle of birth and death always take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord in devotional service. Becoming purified by executing your allotted occupation, just situate the Supreme Lord in your heart, and without deviating for a moment, engage always in His service. And this is one of the proofs about devotional service, that it's not dependent on any material conditions. And there's one verse, I forget who it's spoken by, but he's saying it's not dependent on intelligence, because Gajendra achieved the shelter at the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu. He just offered a lotus flower. It's not dependent on age, because Dhruva Maharaj was only 5 years old. It's not dependent on physical, beauty or health and those things, because Kubja was a hunchback woman. She had, like this, and there's a list of many things. It's only dependent on sincerity and dedication and surrender.
Sincerity cannot be hidden by material conditioning.
Yes, of course, can be hidden, covered over for the time being.
So that means that material conditioning can be an obstacle for devotional practice.
Yes, but devotional service, actually, because it's spiritual and transcendental and of the nature of the soul, it can't be stopped by any material conditions. That's a fact. Hoituki apratiyata te atma suprasidati. It's not impeded by any material condition, by time, by space, actually. So it's not that the devotional service itself can be impeded or contaminated, but we can be. Our self can be covered, and that can make a blockage between. Well, it's like Krishna says in the Gita, whenever and wherever Dharma becomes dissipated or mixed. So that's the question, isn't it? It actually can't be, but can become covered temporarily. So I appear to re-establish it. My dear Dhruva, as far as I'm concerned, I do not find anyone who can mitigate your distress but the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose eyes are like lotus petals. They're described like lotus petals because they're bluish, and then outside there is a reddish, like the blue and red lotus. Many demigods, such as Lord Brahma, seek the pleasure of the goddess of fortune, but the goddess of fortune herself, with a lotus flower in her hand, is always ready to render service to the Supreme Lord. The great sage Maitreya continued, the instruction of Dhruva Maharaj's mother Suniti was actually meant for fulfilling his desired objective. Therefore, after deliberate consideration and with intelligence and fixed determination, he left his father's house. So, in those days, just imagine the genetic quality of the person, 5 years old, has such intelligence and ability to understand spiritual things, that he's prepared to leave everything at that age and go in the forest, It's like...
Reminds me of Gadadhar. Because when I first met Gadadhar, he was 5 years old, and I was like, wow, this boy is...
Do you mean this Gadadhar from New Zealand?
This Saraswati's...
Oh, okay, yeah.
He's had such intelligence behind him,
Yeah, that's right. But remember, this is only like 2 generations or 3 from Lord Brahma himself, the creator.
Oh, I did not know that about Dhruva, that he was that close from... from origin.
This is way, 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 way back, I guess, yeah. Well, the great sage Narad overheard this news, and understanding all the activities of Dhruva Maharaj, he was struck with wonder. He approached Dhruva, and touching the boy's head with his all-virtuous hand, he spoke as follows: "How wonderful are the powerful Kshatriyas! They cannot tolerate even a slight infringement upon their prestige. Just imagine. This boy is only a small child, yet harsh words from his stepmother proved unbearable to him." So we have to be realistic. We can't think, oh yes, the ideal, to be humble, be tolerant, offer all respect, but then the material nature is there, of the person under the modes of nature. Sattva, the Brahmins are predominantly sattva gun, but there's always some mixing with the other modes. Predominantly sattva. The Kshatriyas are rajasic, maybe with some sattva, etc., and then you have Vaishyas, Shudras, Rajas and Tamas and Rajas, like that. So the nature is there. So, that's why in the Gita, Krishna is saying to Arjuna, when Arjuna decided not to fight initially, and Krishna was inciting his pride as a Kshatriya, saying, look, if you leave the battlefield, and what you're saying is go and live in the forest by begging, what's that? Those who see you leave, they won't think you've left for any noble reasons. They'll just think you're a coward. You've lost the plot. You can't handle it. And that'll be very painful for you. They'll scorn your abilities, and you'll be, and for one who's been honoured, dishonour is worse than death.
Wow.
People are prepared to fight and die, right, to save their honour, quote unquote, and like that. So especially the Kshatriyas. And that's necessary because they have to chastise the evildoers and protect the weak. Kshatriya comes from chatra, the verb root is to protect. Yeah. So, and that's why previously the marriages would be strictly done, Brahmin to Brahmin, Kshatriya to Kshatriya, like that. There were certain exceptions and things like that, but generally, as Krishna says in the Gita, to avoid the Varna Shamkara, unwanted population, degradation of the population. Because after the Mahabharata war, the majority of the men were no more. So you had so many widows, so many orphans, and that's why Yudhishthira Maharaj, he was feeling so bad, even though it was supposed to be a righteous war, as to rid the world of the evildoers, but he constantly was feeling, it's just because of my pride and desire to have the kingdom that all this thing has happened and all these people have been killed. Several times, or at least twice, during the battle itself, Yudhishthira also did an Arjuna, if we could say, meaning, he became very set and didn't want to fight and said, this is useless, we shouldn't continue. I was seeing all these people daily being killed on both sides. It was very, very upsetting to him. And Krishna had to kind of fire him up, say, no, you have to do your duty, and so many arguments. But The great sage Narad told Dhruva, "My dear boy, you are only a little boy whose attachment is to sports and other frivolities. Why are you so affected by words insulting your honour? If you feel that your sense of honour has been insulted, you still have no cause for dissatisfaction. This kind of dissatisfaction is another feature of the illusory energy. Every living entity is controlled by his previous actions, and therefore there are different varieties of life for enjoying or suffering." The process of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is very wonderful. One who is intelligent should accept that process and be satisfied with whatever comes, favourable or unfavourable, by His supreme will. Now you have decided to undertake the mystic process of meditation under the instruction of your mother, just to achieve the mercy of the Lord. But in my opinion, such austerities are not possible for any ordinary man. It is very difficult to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the Bhakti Yoga is simultaneously very easy and very difficult. You can say it's very easy to perform, right? Hearing, chanting, remembering. That's not like severe austerity or something like that. But to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead is another question. One time a devotee asked Sridhar Maharaj, what would be the most worrisome thing, to a devotee? Forget the word to use, and there's many answers, you could give to that, many answers. But at that time, Sridhar Maharaj said that he doesn't know that if his service is actually going to satisfy the Lord. It's like hitting the target, so to say. And how do we ever actually know? We don't actually ever know. All we can say is, yes, if we serve a Vaishnava and Guru like that, then we have the faith that Krishna's accepting service from them, through them. So in a way, he was giving this advice to Dhruva, but Narad in a way is testing him, testing his determination. Narad continued, "After trying this process for many, many births and remaining unattached to material contamination, placing themselves continually in trance and executing many types of austerities, many mystic yogis were unable to find the end of the path of God realization. For this reason, my dear boy, you should not endeavour for this. It will not be successful. It is better that you go home. When you are grown up, by the mercy of the Lord, you will get a chance for these mystic performances. At that time you may execute this function." So he's testing his determination. Dhruva isn't to be put off. One should try to keep himself satisfied in any condition of life, whether distress or happiness, which is offered by the Supreme Will. A person who endures in this way is able to cross over the darkness of nescience very easily. It's funny because the Brahmin nature can tolerate insult but not physical pain, but the Kshatriya nature can tolerate physical pain but not insult. It's kind of the other way. Every man should act like this. When he meets a person more qualified than himself, he should be very pleased. When he meets someone less qualified than himself, he should be compassionate toward him. And when he meets someone equal to himself, he should make friendship with him. In this way, one is never affected by the threefold miseries of this material world. But otherwise, in materially, it's just the opposite. When you meet someone more qualified, they're envious. If they find someone less qualified, they deride them. And if you find someone equal, they probably compete with them, And this is the cause of material tribulations. Dhruva Maharaj said, "My dear Lord Naradji, for a person whose heart is disturbed by the material conditions of happiness and distress, whatever you've so kindly explained for attainment of peace of mind is certainly a very good instruction. But as far as I'm concerned, I am covered by ignorance, and this kind of philosophy does not touch my heart." "My dear Lord, I am very impudent for not accepting your instructions, but this is not my fault. It is due to my having been born in a Kshatriya family. My stepmother Suruchi has pierced my heart with her harsh words. Therefore your valuable instruction does not stand in my heart." There's a saying we used to say at school, sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me. But actually that's not the case. I mean, words they're like arrows, they pierce the heart. And these things can rankle for years and years together. O learned Brahmana, I want to occupy a position more exalted than any yet achieved within the three worlds by anyone, even by my fathers and grandfathers. If you will oblige, kindly advise me of an honest path to follow by which I can achieve the goal of my life. My dear Lord, you are a worthy son of Lord Brahma, and you travel playing on your musical instrument, the veena, for the welfare of the entire universe. You're like the sun which rotates in the universe for the benefit of all living beings. The sage Maitreya continued, the great personality Narada Muni, upon hearing the words of Dhruva Maharaj, became very compassionate towards him, and in order to show him causeless mercy, he gave him the following expert advice. The great sage told Dhruva Maharaj, the instruction given by your mother Suniti to follow the path of devotional service to the Supreme Lord is just suitable for you. You should therefore completely absorb yourself in the devotional service of the Lord.
Maharaj, could this be Narada's kind of first disciple? Maybe.
Maybe. It might say so in the purport. I don't know. So now I'm just going to. We haven't got so long, so I'm just going to kind of give the gist of it. So he gives us advice. He advises him to go to the banks of the Jamuna in the Madhavan forest, and that's an auspicious holy place, and begin his meditation, to take 3 baths daily there, and do Ashtanga Yoga, do the asanas, then the pranayam exercises, and this way control your life air, your mind and senses, and completely free yourself from all material contamination, and then begin to meditate on the Supreme Lord within the heart. It's all described in the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Krishna gives a synthesis of Patanjali Yoga there. Then he describes the form of the appearance of the Lord somewhat, describing the Lord's form, his youthful body and his limbs and everything about. He says, real yogis meditate on the transcendental form of the Lord as he stands on the whirl of the lotus of their hearts, the jewel-like nails of his lotus feet glittering. The Lord is always smiling, and the devotee should constantly see the Lord in this form as he looks very mercifully toward the devotee. In this way, the meditator should look toward the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the bestower of all benedictions. So this is the goal of the Ashtanga Yoga, is to meet the Lord in the heart. So then he gives to Dhruva the mantra. that he's to use in his meditation. Do you remember what it is? It's what we said at the beginning of the class. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. It's a 12-syllable mantra for worshipping Lord Krishna. So as one recites this mantra, one visualizes the form of the Lord and various offerings to him, fruits, flowers, incense and so on. But this can be done according to time, place and circumstance. Like if he's in the jungle, right, you have to do it all mentally. And he gives various advice about the different things he could offer in the jungle, different types of grasses, flowers, and things from trees, and tulsi leaves, if possible, which are very dear to the Lord.
Wow.
And you can also meditate upon the transcendent activities and pastimes of the Lord in his different incarnations. So, off goes Dhruva Maharaj, right, to the forest. Then Narad went back to the king. And the king was upset because Dhruva Maharaj had disappeared. And Narad said, "What's wrong? Have you been hampered in following your religious rites, economic development and sense gratification?" So the king was lamenting that he'd banished him. Because of him, he'd been banished. And even though he knows he was a great soul and a very good devotee. And he's thinking of him alone in the jungle at night, unprotected. And he probably might have been attacked by wild animals and eaten alive. And he's lamenting how much I was conquered by my wife. And I'm so hard-hearted that I rejected him. Then Narada tells him, don't be worried about him. He's well protected by the Supreme Lord. And his reputation will become spread all over the universe. And he will do activities that no one has ever done before. And after that, he'll come back home. So, hearing this advice, the king, Uttanapad, he basically lost all interest in his kingly duties and became spiritually developed. Didn't say he left home, but maybe it says that later. So then, meanwhile, Dhruva Maharaj is in the jungle, in the forest, and following the instructions of Narad. And the first month he only ate fruits and berries every third day. The second month he only ate every week, every 6 days, and he only took dry grass and leaves. In the third month he only drank water every 9 days. In the fourth month he completely mastered his prana, and he only would breathe once every 12th day. In the fifth month, he was able to stand on one leg continuously and fix his mind fully on the Parabrahman. And this way, he began to meditate then on the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And his austerity was so extreme that it began to disturb the balance of the universe. The planets began to tremble.
Maharaj, what is the connection? Why, if like someone is so austere, it changes the environment?
Well, I suppose it says here, the pressure of his toe, when he was standing on one leg, pushed down half of the earth. Just as an elephant being carried on a boat rocks the boat left and right with his every step. Yeah, because the earth is floating in space, right? So, push it down. So he became practically one in heaviness with Lord Vishnu. And because he closed all the orifices of his body, and his consciousness was fully fixed in the heart, so he wasn't even breathing at all. So the universal breath began to get choked up, and the demigods couldn't breathe. They felt suffocated, so they began to pray to the Lord. We've never experienced such a thing. Please save us from this danger. What's happening? They're saying, what's happening? Yeah. Let's continue with the next. So they got reassured by the Lord, and they went back to their planets. And then the Lord went on the back of Garuda, and he went down to see Dhruva. But what happened then, because the Lord had left his eternal abode in the spiritual sky, the Lord in the heart disappeared to Dhruva like that, and he became disturbed and broke his meditation. But when he opened his eyes, he saw that Supreme Lord there, standing there, externally to him, just as he'd been seeing before. And then he fell down and offered obeisances, and he became completely overwhelmed, and drinking the Lord with his eyes, and he's kissing the Lord's lotus feet. And he wanted to offer prayers, but he couldn't, because he's only a 5-year-old boy. He became choked up, and he was therefore in a very awkward position. So the Lord touched his conch shell to the head of Dhruva Maharaj, who was standing there with folded hands. At that time, Dhruva Maharaj became fully enlightened in Vedic knowledge. And he came to his senses and was able to offer prayers, which he did. And obviously these go on for quite a time. And then he says, those are very nice, the prayers of Dhruva Maharaj. So after he offered his prayers, and the Lord congratulated him and said, I know the desire within your heart about getting the kingdom back. And although your desire is very ambitious and very difficult to fulfill, still I shall favour you with its fulfilment. So, okay, we have finished there, but that's just, we haven't even really touched on it much, but what happens after that? We can continue it sometime. Hare Krishna.
We're still waiting for...
Are we? Oh, yeah. Yeah, ultimately, at the end, he was given the pole star, which is the North Star. And it's the hub of the universe. All the planets are revolving not around the sun as they think, but around the pole star actually. Like it said, like a bull tied with a rope to a mill, is going around. So the pole star, and he ruled for many, many thousands of years.
So he was part of the Manu's dynasty?
Yes.
So we can assume maybe he's from this plane, this loka, Loka, yeah?
Yeah.
Wow, what an incredible...
So what happened, he offered these prayers to the Lord, and then when the Lord gave him this benediction, then he felt ashamed of his desire, his material desire. And the famous thing he said was like, what I was searching for I thought was diamonds, but it's like pieces of glass. Now I've seen you. Now I've had your association. I was just foolishly praying for things which are perishable, and I was unable to accept the advice of Narad. I prayed only for useless things. So then, then he went back home. The news came to his father, King Uttanapad, that he was coming back. He was on his way back to the palace, but he couldn't really believe it. How he could have survived in the jungle all that time. But he had to believe it because it was told by Narad. So he came out of his palace with his entourage and Brahmins and soldiers and family and ministers, and there was a great celebration. And they both Suniti and Suruchi, his queens, were there on palanquins, and they met him. And he got down from his chariot and embraced him and everything. But Dhruva Maharaj was changed. He was completely purified. He'd been touched by the lotus feet of the Lord. So he offered obeisances to his father, and he bowed his head at the feet of his two mothers. And his brother Uttama also embraced, and they even the mother, it seems like, the Suruchi, right, was his stepmother, and she also blessed him and embraced him. So, and then his real mother also, Suniti. So like now he was a great hero, because he'd survived all this time in the jungle and become realized Krishna consciousness. So there was a great celebration then. So now Dhruva Maharaj is now a little bit grown up, and when his father saw he was able to take charge of the kingdom, and his ministers were agreeable to this, and also the citizens were also very fond of him, so he enthroned Dhruva Maharaj as emperor of the planet, and he left his palace completely detached from all worldly affairs and went to the forest himself. Dhruva Maharaj then married the daughter of Prajapati Shishuma, who was called Brahmi, and they had two sons called Kalpa and Vatsara. He also had another wife named Ila, who was actually the daughter of Vayu, demigod Vayu, and they had a son called Utkala and a daughter. Then the brother Uttama was still unmarried. He was his younger brother of Dhruva. And he went on a hunting excursion, and he got killed up in the Himalayas by a powerful yaksha, the yaksha race in the Himalayas. So when he died, the brother Uttama, his mother Suruchi, the king's first queen, favourite queen, she died soon after, maybe in separation or what, it doesn't say, but she died. So then Dhruva, he, as the king, as the emperor, he had to felt he had to avenge the death of his brother on the yakshas. So he became, again it says he became overwhelmed with lamentation and anger. So even though he had so much realization about the Lord, his nature is still there, you know, the Kshatriya type nature. And so he went to the capital city of the yakshas in the Himalayas called Alakapuri. So this is up in the right in the northern part of the Himalayas, and on the way there he crossed a valley in which he saw all these ghosts who were followers of Lord Shiva. And when he reached the city, he blew his conch shell, and it vibrated everywhere, and the wives of the yakshas became very much frightened and scared. And then all the yakshas, they poured out of the city to attack Dhruva Maharaj. And it says, Dhruva Maharaj, who was a great charioteer and certainly a great bowman also, immediately began to kill them by simultaneously discharging arrows at the rate of 3 at a time. So they were being basically threatened severely, and they felt they were going to be defeated, but at the same time they were praising Dhruva. To see in those days, they were praising him as a great warrior and a great, like this. The Kshatriya spirit, they had that, you know. But they couldn't tolerate the way they were being defeated. So they began to throw twice as many arrows, 6 from each soldier, and they began to exhibit their prowess. There were 130,000 strong, and it describes the battle now between them. And he was completely covered by a shower of weapons, just like a mountaintop is covered by incessant rainfall. And the siddhas in the sky became very scared that he would be lost, that he would be killed. They cried that Dhruva Maharaj was just like the sun, and now he'd set within the ocean of the yakshas. And they thought they were victorious because they couldn't see him anymore. But then suddenly Dhruva came out from underneath, just as the sun suddenly appears from within foggy mist. His bow and arrows twanged and hissed, causing lamentation in the hearts of his enemies. He began to shoot incessant arrows, shattering all their different weapons, just as the blasting wind scatters the assembled clouds in the sky. The sharp arrows released from the bow of Dhruva Maharaj pierced the shields and bodies of the enemy like the thunderbolts released by the King of Heaven, which dismantled the bodies of the mountains. So these yakshas, they weren't like savages. They were it was like an Asuric civilization, but they were lots of opulence. They had their armor and their all their accoutrements, and they had lots of jewels and beautiful weapons, and were beautiful actually. But their bodies were all scattered in bits all over the battlefield. Then they began to flee. They fled back into their city. But Dhruva Maharaj, he didn't follow them into the city to kind of finish them off, because he thought the yakshas, they have mystic powers, So he was talking with his charioteer about what they should do. And suddenly they heard a tremendous sound, as if the whole ocean were there. And they found that from the sky a great dust storm was coming from all directions. This is their mystic power they're doing. And there's a huge storm and lightning and rainfall. And in the rainfall, as it came down, there was blood and mucus, pus, stool, urine and marrow falling heavily before Dhruva Maharaj. and trunks of bodies falling from the sky. Next, a great mountain was visible in the sky, and from all directions hailstones fell, along with lances, clubs, swords, iron bludgeons, and huge pieces of stone. Dhruva Maharaj saw many big serpents with angry eyes vomiting forth fire and coming to devour him, along with groups of mad elephants, lions and tigers. Some pages missing here. There's a picture of that anyway. Then the fierce sea with foaming waves, as if it were the time of the dissolution of the universe, and came with great roaring sound before him. So they're creating all these phenomena to frighten him. So the sages, they all assembled and offered him encouragement against these mystic tricks. They said, if you chant the holy name of the Lord, which is as powerful as the Lord himself, many men can be fully protected from fierce death without difficulty. Thus a devotee is saved. So, there's in the Psalms, have we got it here? Yeah, I've got it here. There's a beautiful thing here. Psalm 119, Book of Psalms in the Bible. Yes, about being protected by the Lord. You know, he says, Psalm 91. He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God, in Him will I trust. Surely He will deliver me from the snare of the fowler and from the noisome pestilence. He shall cover me with His feathers, and under His wings shall I take shelter. His truth shall be my shield and buckler. I shall not be afraid for the terror by night, nor for the arrow that flieth by day, nor for the pestilence that walks in darkness, nor for the destruction that wastes at noonday. 1,000 shall fall at my side, and 10,000 at my right hand, but it shall not come near me. With my eyes only I shall behold and see the reward of the wicked. Because I've made the Lord, which is my refuge, the Most High my habitation, there shall no evil befall me, nor shall any plague come near my dwelling. For He shall give His angels charge over me to keep me in all my ways. They shall bear me up in their hands, lest I dash my foot against a stone. I shall tread upon the lion and adder, the young lion and the dragon shall I trample under my feet. Because I have set my love upon Him, therefore will He deliver me. He will set me on high, because I know His name. I shall call upon Him, and He will answer me. He will be with me in trouble. He will deliver me and honour me. With long life will He satisfy me, and show me His salvation. It's kind of like that. So then he was encouraged by these words of the sages. So he touched water, did archaman, took up a special arrow which had been made by Lord Narayan, and fixed it on his bow. It's called the Narayan Astra. So even before he shot the arrow, as soon as he put it on his bow, all the illusions disappeared, were vanquished. Just as all material pains and pleasures are vanquished when one becomes fully cognizant of the self. Now I love this verse. It says, Tasya rastram dhanushi prayunjata suvana punka kalahangsa vashasha vinishrishta abhivishod vishad balam chitavanang bhimarava shikandhina. Even as Dhruva Maharaj fixed the weapon made by Narayana Rishi onto his bow, arrows with golden shafts and feathers like the wings of a swan flew out from it. They entered the enemy soldiers with a great hissing sound, just as peacocks enter a forest with tumultuous crowing. Very poetic, yeah. Narayana Rishi is a famous rishi who lived up in the Himalayas. And actually, Krishna and Arjuna, in their previous incarnation, were Nara and Narayan Rishi. Krishna being Narayan Rishi, Narayan, and Arjuna being Nara Rishi. Nara means man, human. Yeah, so they're like two brahmacharis up in the Himalayas doing tapasya. And one time Indra became envious. He became afraid that because of their tapasya, they would be able to take over his place, as the king of heaven. So he thought he would try to take them down. So he collected all the most beautiful girls of the court, Apsaras, and he selected the most beautiful, and he sent them down to earth and said, like that. So what happened? They all coming in a big crowd like that towards them. Nara and Narayan Rishi were there, headed by Cupid himself.
Wow.
And then, but what happened then was, somehow from Nara and Narayan Rishi, from their bodies, came out many, many beautiful girls, more beautiful than them even.
Wow.
And they were like, what? And they realized they were defeated, and then they got afraid. They thought, oh, we've done an offense, to the rishis. And they apologized, and then they blessed them, and they went back. Everything was okay. So anyway, in this way, the fighting went back and forth many times, and but what actually was happening was then Dhruva Maharaj was like massacring he was going to destroy the whole Yaksha race, because he was like getting into it, and then the Swayambhuva Manu came to him and said, these Yakshas, they're not actually offenders, only one of them has killed your brother. Why you're destroying all of them? And you should stop, and you stop being unnecessarily angry. It's the path to hellish life. Now you're going beyond the limit by killing them all. And this will be a stain on our family, and it's not at all approved by authorities. We understand that you're aggrieved by the killing of your brother, but for one Yaksha's offence, you're killing so many others who are innocent. One should not accept the body as the self, and thus, like the animals, kill the bodies of others. It's especially forbidden by saintly persons who follow the path of devotional service to the Lord. And he said, I'm surprised, you have been so much blessed by the Lord. Why have you undertaken this abominable behavior? The Lord is very satisfied with his devotee when the devotee greets other people with tolerance, mercy, friendship and equality. So there's giving some good instruction there. It goes on for a while there. And then it's like that in the Bhagavatam. When anybody speaks, it goes on for quite a while there. Prayers or instructions. So he invites him, just surrender to the Supreme Lord. So leave all this fighting and killing and just turn towards the Lord and go back to your realization, something, and you will understanding that the Lord lives in every living entity as a super soul, and you will very soon forget the illusory understanding of I and my, my brother and my kingdom. Control your anger, for anger is the foremost enemy on the path of spiritual realization. It's the gate to hell, according to Bhagavad Gita. Please follow my instructions. So then Dhruva's anger subsided and he stopped his killing activities. And then the Kuvera, who's what was called the treasurer of the demigods, and appeared before him. And of course he's a very powerful being and has a big entourage, and he's obviously related to Indra very much. And he spoke to Dhruva Maharaj, said, "I'm very pleased with you for giving up your enmity like this. And again, he advises him to engage fully in devotional service. And then Dhruva asked Kuvera, or prayed for his blessing, that he might have unflinching faith in the Lord. Like we say to people, please pray for me. So he blessed him and disappeared, and then Dhruva went back to his city and did many big yajnas for satisfying the Lord Vishnu there. And he was a great king for many thousands of years, or emperor of the world, actually. He ruled over this planet for 36,000 years. He diminished the reactions of pious activities by enjoyment, and by practicing austerities, he diminished inauspicious reactions. The self-controlled great soul Dhruva Maharaj thus passed many, many years favourably executing three kinds of worldly activities: religiosity, economic development, and satisfaction of all material desires. Thereafter he handed over the charge of the royal throne to his son. After that, then he left his kingdom, and considering his body, his wife, his children, his friends, his army, his treasury, his palaces, and his many enjoyable pleasure grounds to be creations of the illusory energy. So he retired to Bhadrakashram in the Himalayas. And then again he purified his senses and concentrated on his yogic practice and fixed his mind on the Lord, and became completely liberated from all material bondage. So basically he was going to leave the planet at that point. So then he saw a very beautiful airplane coming down from the sky, as if the brilliant full moon were coming down, illuminating all the 10 directions. And he saw two very beautiful associates of Lord Vishnu in the plane. They had 4 hands and a blackish bodily lustre. They were very youthful, and their eyes were just like reddish lotus flowers. They held clubs in their hands, and they were dressed in very attractive garments with helmets, and were decorated with necklaces, bracelets, and earrings. Remember, one of the 5 kinds of liberation is to attain the same form as the Lord. So these Vaikuntha Vasis, they look actually identical to Lord Vishnu, but there are some things which the Lord has that they don't have, like this jewel on the chest and the white hair, Srivats. Otherwise you could say, when we say becoming one with the Lord, in that sense they become one, they attain just like what you meditate on, then as you think, so you become. So they're meditating on Lord Vishnu, so they have the Vishnu body, or Vishnu-like body. Dhruva Maharaj, seeing that these uncommon personalities were direct servants of the Supreme Lord, immediately stood up, but being puzzled, in hastiness he forgot how to receive them in the proper way. Therefore he simply offered obeisances with folded hands, and chanted and glorified the holy names of the Lord. It's like sometimes if we forget to offer, suitable particular prayers, we just go, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, and that sort of like covers everything, that's like the Maha Mantra. Because Dhruva Maharaj was always absorbed in thinking of the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, his heart was full with Krishna. When these 2 confidential servants of the Lord, who were named Nanda and Sunanda, approached him, smiling happily. Dhruva stood with folded hands, bowing humbly. They then addressed him as follows. So they said, "We have been specifically deputed to take you to the spiritual world. To achieve the Vishnu Lok is very difficult, but by austerity you have conquered. Even the great rishis and demigods cannot achieve this position. Now please come, you are welcome to go there. No one before you has ever achieved such a transcendental planet." So then Dhruva took his sacred bath, dressed himself nicely, and did all his spiritual duties. And then he bowed down to them and was preparing to board the airplane. But first he circumambulated it and offered many prayers. And then his body began to transform, became as brilliant as molten gold. So thus he was completely prepared to board the transcendental plane. But you know what happens now? Don't worry, he gets on the plane. But just as he was attempting to get on the plane, he saw death personified approach him. Not caring for death, however, he took advantage of the opportunity to put his feet on the head of death, and thus he got up on the airplane, which was as big as a house.
What?
So he stood on the head of death like a step to get onto the plane. So this airplane, it wasn't just like a normal, it was like a huge aerial city with parks, gardens, many mansions, palaces, things like that. A Biman, as it's called. They fly, they don't need any fuel, they just fly on, thought power. So then, the demigods began to praise and do music and shower flowers and so on. So he was seated in the plane, and the plane was just about to leave. Then he remembered his poor mother, Suniti, and he thought, how shall I go alone to the Vaikuntha planet and leave behind my poor mother? Because she was his Vartman Pradashika guru. She had first given him the clue about going to the forest. Go to the forest, do your meditation, and then meet Lord Vishnu. So, although his Diksha Guru was Narad Muni, but she was like his Shiksha Guru, he considered, I can't go, I don't want to go without her. So they could understand his mind, Nanda and Sunanda. And then they showed him, oh, look, your mother is going in another plane. She's getting on another plane over there. So he passed through space in this airplane and saw all the planets of the solar system and also the demigods in their airplanes showering flowers on him. He went up past the 7 planetary systems, which are ruled by the 7 sages, the Sapta Rishis, and up to the Vaikuntha planets. But we understand that this planet, Vaikuntha planet, when you went to the pole star, is considered a Vaikuntha planet. That remains even after the dissolution of the universe, apparently. So that's his blessing there.
So he's headed there now?
Yes. So then Narad was very satisfied. They saw that he'd gone off, and basically recounting the glories of Dhruva Maharaj. Then Maitreya said, "My dear Vidura, whatever you've asked from me about the great reputation and character of Dhruva Maharaj, I've explained to you in all detail. Great saintly persons and devotees very much like to hear about Dhruva Maharaj. By hearing the narration of Dhruva Maharaj, one can fulfill desires for wealth, reputation and increased duration of life. It is so auspicious that one can even go to a heavenly planet or can attain Dhruvalok, which was achieved by Dhruva Maharaj just by hearing about him. The demigods also become pleased because it is so glorious and it is so powerful that it can counteract all the results of one's sinful actions. Anyone who hears the narration of Dhruva Maharaj and who repeatedly tries with faith and devotion to understand his pure character, attains the pure devotional platform and executes pure devotional service. By such activities one can diminish the threefold miserable conditions of material life. Anyone who hears this narration of Dhruva Maharaj acquires exalted qualities like him. For anyone who desires greatness, prowess or influence, here is the process to acquire them. And for thoughtful men who want adoration, here is the proper means. The great sage Maitreya recommended, one should chant of the character and activities of Dhruva Maharaj both in the morning and in the evening with great attention and care in a society of brahmanas or other twice-born persons. So then he gives various advice about particular auspicious times on Dwadashi or certain times, certain constellations, or when the moon is in certain locations, etc., to do the recitation of this chapter of Dhruva Maharaj. Do that. The narration of Dhruva Maharaj is sublime knowledge for the attainment of immortality. Persons who are unaware of the absolute truth can be led to the path of truth. Those who out of transcendental kindness take on the responsibility of becoming master protectors of the poor living entities automatically gain the interest and blessings of the demigods. And then the last verse says here, Idam mayate bihitam kuru dvaha dhruvasya vikyata bishuddha karmana hitva bhaka kritanakya kanimatur grihang chavishnam sharanam jojagama. The transcendental activities of Dhruva Maharaj are well known all over the world and they are very pure. In childhood, Dhruva Maharaj rejected all kinds of toys and playthings, left the protection of his mother and seriously took shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu. My dear Vidura, I therefore conclude this narration, for I have described to you all its details. And the purport is just very short, says, it is said by Chanaka Pandit that life is certainly short for everyone, but if one acts properly, his reputation will remain for a generation. As the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna is everlastingly famous, so the reputation of Lord Krishna's devotee is also everlasting. Therefore, in describing Dhruva Maharaj's activities, two specific words have been used: Vikyata, very famous, and Vishud, transcendental. Dhruva Maharaj is leaving home at a tender age and taking shelter of the Supreme Lord in the forest is a unique example in this world. That's the end of the chapter. Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai. God, look at the time.
I got a billy friend, just...
Great. You're still going to chant Hari Haraya, aren't you, Prabhu? Oh, yeah. Yeah?
He'd listen to the
The whole
story.
thing.
Is it?
Now he's rolling around in ecstasy. They're still not back yet, huh?
I think they are.
Okay.
I think so. Hari
Hari Haraya Nama Krishna Yadavaya Nama Jadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Keshavaya Giridhari Gopinath Madana Mahārāja Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Shadi Gaurava Sanatan Bhakta Raghunatha Shabara Padarenu Modu Panchagras Tandera Charana Shevi Bhakta Shanibas Channame Channame Mohore Abhula Chai go chai Radhe Gambe Koilopa Shri Shri Radha Krishna Nitya Lila Kaurila Prakash Anande Bolo Hari Bhaja Vrindavana Shri Guru Vaishnava Pad Majaya Sana Shri Guru Vaishnava Pada Padma Kari Asha Hari Nama Sankirtan Kahi Narottamodata Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare 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 Rama, Ram Ram, Hare 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 Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaura Hari Haribo. Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Haribo. Jai Sri Sri Guru Garanga Giriraj Mahaprabhu ki Jai Jai Shri Gurudev ki Jai Sri Rupanuga Guru Varga ki Jai Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai Jai Samavit, to say Bhakti Rakha Srila Dev Goswami Maharaj ki jai, Shri Srila Govinda Maharaj ki jai, Srila Acharya Maharaj ki jai, Jai Bhakti Vigna Vignashna Bhagavan Singha Devi ki jai, Prahlad Maharaj ki jai, Jai Samavita Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Kaur Kartal ki jai, Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai, Kaur Premanandi Hari 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 Bo. So when you reverse this,